Mara Dominguez spotted the first orange flecks at 5:42, just as the sun broke over the Cloud Ridge wind farm. The turbine's white blades turned like metronomes against the dawn, slicing up the day into measurable disappearing moments. Every minute mattered now. Somewhere inside those fluttering specks were the last uncorrupted shards of the great archive's entire libraries of human art, science, and history, encoded in microscopic ridges and pigmentation along the Monarch's wing. 2 years earlier, when the world's data centers began failing, their cooling loops overheating under record heat waves, Dr. Omar Gens, hacker biologist, had proposed an outrageous salvation. If we can't keep data frozen in silicon, let's make it fly. He designed an algorithm that translated binary code into fractal wing patterns. CRISPR packets were released into captive monarch caterpillars, rewriting the genes that determined each scale's color. Every migrating generation became living, drifting servers. Soon billions of butterflies shimmered across continents, a distributed, self-repairing cloud. But the climate crisis proved crueler than his optimism. Wildfires chased the nectar corridors north. Herbicides erased milkweed in the Midwest. The monarch population crashed by 97% in 18 months. Gens himself drowned in the Nova Scotia floods, leaving behind partial indexing keys and rumors that the butterflies now carried more than mere literature. Encrypted among the Monet paintings and quantum textbooks, he'd hidden memos about political malfeasance during the resource wars, proof that certain executives had sabotaged desalination plants to inflate water futures. If those files surfaced, the world's fragile coalition governments could ignite anew. If they disappeared, so would any chance for justice. That made Mara both savior and potential destroyer. As a cryptanalyst for the Continental Truth Commission, her mission was straightforward: locate the last breeding cluster, capture a statistically significant sample, sequence their wings, reconstruct the archive, release unclassified materials to the public. Straightforward, except there were perhaps 10,000 monarchs left on Earth, scattered across 3 countries, and bounty hunters financed by corporate stability funds were eager to incinerate every last one. For weeks, she'd followed iterative forecasts, modelers integrating temperature spikes, wind patterns, and decades of migration telemetry, until a narrow probability cone pointed here. A pocket prairie clinging to the edge of a decommissioned Kansas cornfield. She hiked in before dawn, carrying a pollen drone that buzzed ahead, mapping wildflower density. The drone's sensors painted her visor with data: low humidity, rising thermals, favorable glide conditions. Perfect butterfly weather, but also perfect ambush weather for anyone else watching the skies. She knelt, unslung a canister of synthetic milkweed scent, and released a slow plume that shimmered like gasoline in the cool air. Butterflies responded, drifting toward her in hesitant spirals. The first landed on her sleeve, its wings shut, a plain vegetal orange. No black veins, no white dots. It wasn't a monarch at all, a viceroy mimic, nature's decoy. She almost laughed. Nice try, little fraud. She tapped her visor feed to flag the misidentification. Even machine learning got sentimental near extinction. Then came the real ones, 4, 6, a dozen, settling on tall asters. She eased closer. The wing patterns looked ordinary from a distance, yet when sunlight hit at a shallow angle, faint iridescent lattices appeared, polygonal occlusions repeating like QR codes. She snapped rapid-fire macro photos, uploading them to her portable array. The software would translate nanoscopic color shifts into 4-state logic: black, orange, white, iridescent blue. Each quartet equaled 2 bits. Across both wings, a single monarch stored about 30 kilobytes. Tiny, but multiplied across generations, it became a teraflutter of data. She needed at least 80 unique specimens to rebuild the error correction tables. The butterflies weren't cooperating. They scattered whenever her net whooshed. She'd bagged only 17 before a rumble cut through the prairie hush. A black podcopter dropped from the clouds, rotors screaming. Corporate insignia, a Quanta Energy, the very conglomerate accused in Gens's hidden files. Mara cursed. Her drone cam recorded as 2 figures rappelled down in hazard suits, unspooling flamethrower hoses. No subtlety. Burn the prairie, torch the butterflies, evaporate the evidence. Mara leapt into a gully, heart pounding. She activated the drone's emergency mode. It zipped toward the newcomers, lights strobing, pretending to be a larger threat. They swung the flamethrowers anyway. Fire roared across the tall grass. The butterflies shot up in a frightened column. Thousands, more than she dared hope existed. The column corkscrewed into the sky, fire licking at its edges. Monarchs crisped to ash midair. Others escaped, borne by a southeasterly gust. Mara crawled, coughing, through smoke, clutching her sample pack. 17 butterflies, hardly a quorum. She thumbed her satellite phone. Control, evac compromised. Hostiles present, need extraction at grid 48Y. Static. Then a familiar voice. Agent Liao, her handler. Copy. Stormfront grounding all birds. You're on foot. Repeat, on foot. Repeat, Liao, back up. She imagined the code evaporating with every wing crushed by flame. The herd of butterflies moved like a tattered banner along the wind. Eastward. She had to follow. She cinched her respirator, jogged through blistering heat. The prairie became a patchwork of fresh burn scars and stubbled black ash. Behind her, flamethrowers hissed. The mercenaries didn't chase. They simply widened the burn perimeter. Waste nothing but the truth, Mara thought. She kept the swarm in view, a wavering orange river overhead. After 5 kilometers, her lungs blazed and her water gauge blinked red. A half-collapsed farmhouse offered shade. She ducked beneath its leaning awning, boots crunching bottles older than the drought. She had 1 hour before heat stroke flagged her vitals. She unrolled a portable nectar trap, a circular mesh tent spritzing sweetness. The swarm thinned as it crossed the farm, drawn by scent. Dozens spiraled down, settling inside the trap. Mara zipped the mesh and exhaled. Progress. She counted 32 captives, bringing her total to 49. If she could double that, parity checks might fill remaining gaps. She set a parabolic antenna, pinged the Truth Commission again. Still dead air. She tried an alternate channel, pirate frequency 14, rumored to belong to the nomad radio collective The Hums. A gravelly voice answered. Hey, static saint, at your service. Who bleeds over my waves? Mara Dominguez, field agent. I need a relay enemy intercept behind me, sample at risk. Coordinates, she transmitted. Silence stretched. Then, closest Hummer station is Edelstein, 40 clicks, your northeast. Got a bike? Just legs? There's an aqueduct way you can hike. Keep low, nightfall hides you. We'll keep the corp ears busy with scrap music. Gracias. Bring us a story worth telling. Mara repacked the trap inside a soft crate lined with cooling gel, slung it across her shoulders. 40 kilometers. At night. With mercenaries near and time dwindling for the monarchs whose genes were programmed to die after migration, another of Jens's failsafes to prevent ecological overrun. This cohort had at most 3 weeks. She started northeast, following a dried irrigation ditch until twilight bled purple. A chorus of crickets rattled like hard drives spinning down. She tested a random monarch under red-filtered lamp. Wings spread, the fractal grid crisp. She ran a quick lossless compression sample. No 0.04% data corruption. Still viable. She allowed herself a memory. As a child, in Michoacan, she'd stand beneath cascades of butterflies so dense branches drooped. She hadn't known then that each wing might be singing poetry in code. She'd simply known wonder. A distant flash lit the western sky prairie, burning still. Her pace quickened. At 2:30 she reached Edelstein, a ghost town repurposed by the Hums into an antenna forest. Shattered storefronts bristled with scavenged dishes. Wind chimes made from hard drive platters clanged overhead. A wiry woman emerged, gray braids glowing in flashlight glare. Agent Domingolg? Yes, I'm Ria. You look crispy. Long night. Inside a gutted bank vault, Ria had built a microsequencer. Whole cities go dark, she said, yet I still get reagent shipments. Priorities, she grinned. Let's see your treasure. Mara transferred 49 monarchs into chilled trays. Ria's hands were gentler than any scientist Mara had seen. She stroked each thorax, murmuring thanks, before extracting a single hind wing. The butterflies would live. The wings wouldn't regrow, but flight was still possible. Rhea released them into a mesh greenhouse where moonflowers awaited. The sequencer whirred, scanning ridge arrays at 10,000 frames a second. Lines of base 64 scrolled across a hologram. Mara watched index keys snap into place. Looks like A block cultural, B block legal. Rhea paused. Here, encrypted C block. That your smoking gun? Could be. Missing parity lines 3, 7, 11, etc. You'll need at least 30 more individuals. Mara exhaled. She'd known, but hope had whispered otherwise. Rhea pointed to a transcontinental rail on the map. The swarm you tailed probably moves along this thermal corridor. Next nectar bloom is in the Ozark Glades, 75 clicks, southeast. But, she tapped a newsfeed. Emergency bulletins about aquifer sinkholes, storms, and corporate no-fly zones. They'll incinerate every patch before you arrive. Mara felt weightless, as if her bones had emptied out. Then we beat them, tonight. Rhea laughed softly. You're out of time and muscles. Take the rail runner. In the yard sat a solar-charged maintenance cart, normally used by track inspectors. Rhea loaded nectar solution canisters and a sonic boombox that emitted subaudible frequencies known to calm monarch flight. Dawn shimmered as Mara powered the cart. The electric motor hummed, sliding her through tall tunnels of sweet gum and oak. Every hour she stopped, sprayed nectar along flowering edges, waited. Sometimes a monarch or two drifted down. Never enough. Halfway up an incline, the sky bruised. A storm front roared, hurling dust like shrapnel. The cart shuddered to a halt. Solar input dropped. Mara huddled beneath a mylar tarp, protecting the crate. Lightning cracked open the heavens, momentarily illuminating a sight she wouldn't have believed. A monarch vortex, tens of thousands strong, caught in the updraft, tossed like glowing embers against charcoal clouds. The prairie fires had forced multiple fragments to converge, swarming along the storm's leading edge. Mara's breath caught. Here was her quorum, if she could reach them. But storm winds screamed at 80 kilometers an hour, impossible to stand, let alone net. She checked barometrics. A lull predicted in 23 minutes. She prepared. Poles extended, remote nets primed, dopamine spray ready to induce temporary lethargy in captured butterflies. When the wind dipped, she sprinted onto a ridge, nets launching like jellyfish. They ballooned, swallowed pockets of the vortex, cinched shut. She triggered micropumps, filling each net with calming mist. The monarchs quieted. She repeated until she collapsed, rain-soaked, yet triumphant. Back at the cart she tallied. 87 new specimens. Total, 136. Well above threshold. She rode hard back to Edelstein under retreating thunder. Rhea greeted her with a thumbs up, eyes wide. Sequencing began before Mara had finished changing clothes. The rebuilt archive emerged glacially, stripe by stripe. They burned through night and day, cross-verifying hash. Finally, at 3:14, the checksum indicators turned green. The archive lived again, but so did risk. Publishing everything at once could topple governments, destabilize already teetering supply lines. Yet hoarding knowledge was how calamities began. Mara requested a private line to Liao. This time the signal reached. She summarized. Archive intact, contains classified C block implicating Aquanta execs in sabotage, leading to 50,000 water famine deaths. Liao exhaled. That intel is explosive. Commission will redact until tribunals are prepared. Redaction buries truth. Delaying isn't denial, Mara. She hesitated. Rhea watched, silent. The butterflies in the greenhouse clung to mesh, beating their half-wings softly. Code had cost them flight. Humanity had cost them everything else. Mara remembered her 10-year-old self beneath Michoacan trees, feeling that wonder. Wonder couldn't survive behind redaction bars. Understood, she told Liao. She ended the call, heart hammering. She turned to Rial. We broadcast, full spectrum. Rial grinned. Static saints rejoice. They patched the archive into the Hume network. Satellite dishes pivoted. Across continents, radios crackled, data torrents spilled. The great paintings, the star maps, lost medicinal journals, re-released, and the C-block, memos, transcripts, time-stamped financial logs. Within hours, crowds massed outside Aquanta Towers. Whistleblowers came forward, emboldened by proof. Governments declared emergency hearings. Mara watched the news ticker scroll, a cocktail of dread and relief inside her chest. She knew violence would follow, but also reckoning, perhaps reform. Truth was messy, like a prairie fire burning old growth, clearing ground for seeds that might or might not sprout. She walked into the greenhouse. Freed monarchs crawled along blossoms, wings tattered but vibrant. She opened the roof panels. A breeze lifted them. Despite missing wedges, many managed flight, wobbling yet determined. From her pocket she released one last butterfly she'd kept since the storm. Pristine, uncut. It rested on her finger before joining the others, an orange fleck merging with dawn. "Good luck," she whispered, uncertain whether she spoke to butterflies or humanity fluttering into its uncertain tomorrow. The swarm dispersed into the brightening sky, carrying coded echoes of everything worth remembering. Yet now, anyone who looked could read the patterns, if they cared to learn.